Good evening, everyone. This is our note-taking session on succession. You should have in front of you your note page. If you do not have a note page, this is how you need to set one up. Go ahead and grab a blank sheet of paper, something without lines. You're going to draw 2 4-panel comic strips, and you'll see what that looks like on the very next slide. This is what you should be looking at when you look at your sheet of paper. You're going to write primary succession up at the top, draw 4 squares in a nice long rectangle. Make sure that they're large enough so that you can draw pictures inside of them. Underneath that one section of panels, so right after we do these 4 concurrent boxes that are together, you're going to draw right underneath it one that says secondary succession and draw the same 4 squares underneath it. All right, if you already have your note page, then you already know what to do. For those of us who do not, as a general reminder, we're writing down everything that's in red in each of these 4 panels, is what we're going to call them, because we are creating a comic strip. And panel 1 is going to go some kind of picture, 2 is going to go a picture, 3 is going to go a picture, and so is panel 4. You're going to do one set of comic strip for primary succession. You're going to do another comic strip for secondary succession. And I tell you on every single slide what you should be drawing in each one of these boxes. So number 1 starts over here on your left, then comes number 2, number 3, and number 4. So I will tell you what needs to go in every single section. Feel free to make this colorful. It is going into our notebooks, and it will be used as notes. So the same things that you see me define and write in red need to end up on your paper somewhere in your comic strip. Make sure it's neat so I can see what you are writing down so that you can get the correct points and the correct grade for your note page. All right, so we're going to start with primary succession. So right next to the words that say primary succession, go ahead and write down this definition. It is the stage of growth of a community of organisms after a catastrophic event like a volcanic eruption or a glacier. Now, once a volcano erupts, right, as we know, lava kind of just shoots out at the top of it. It's going to spread all over the ground, and, well, it's going to pretty much kill everything in its path. Lava is really, really hot. Now, once lava has dried, we're just left with these really big rock formations that are pretty much dried lava. So at this point, we have no trees, we have no animals, we have no dirt. We just got these big, ugly black rocks that are the result of a volcanic eruption. So on the very first panel, remember that's the panel all the way to the left, primary succession, panel 1, all right, you're going to label it stage 1, and I want you to draw a volcano. Okay, don't forget, we're making this as colorful as you want. So in the very first panel, that very first square, go ahead and label it stage 1. You're going to draw a volcano, a volcanic eruption specifically, so make sure you got some nice lava coming out the top of it. All right, and now we're going to be talking about primary succession. That is all 4 of these stages. That is what we call succession. All right, so it's going to be these stages of growth of the community after a catastrophic event, specifically a volcanic eruption or a glacier. After one of these things, we have nothing left but rocks, okay, because lava is going to dry, then all we have left are rocks. All right, so this is a good example of what I mean. So we got that volcano erupting on the left-hand side. This is what it looks like once the lava has dried. There's no dirt. There's nothing for anything to really grow onto. All right, so this is what I mean when I say volcanic eruptions, glaciers. Glaciers don't leave behind rocks this large, but you will have very small pebbles behind the actual glacier. If you don't know what a glacier is, go ahead and look it up on your phones. For those of us who don't have access to the internet just yet, it's pretty much a giant slab of ice that moves really slowly on the ground down a mountain. And what it usually does is it crushes everything in its path and it just drags everything with it. So you got this giant big block of ice, and everything behind the giant block of ice is just a whole bunch of gravel. All right, so once again, in the first panel, you should be drawing something that sort of kind of looks like that picture on the left, a volcano erupting. Now, after that volcano erupts, all we've got left are a whole bunch of rocks. And, well, weirdly enough, things can actually grow on these rocks. And we usually call the very first things that grow after any catastrophic event a pioneer species. All right. So in primary succession specifically, our pioneer species are going to be mosses, lichens, and fungi. All right, so what you see in that little picture right there is a good example of moss. So once again, we're in now the second box underneath primary succession. All right, in that first box, you should have a volcano. The box directly to the right, go ahead and label it stage 2. We're in the box directly to the right, label it stage 2. Inside that box, I want you to draw me some nice looking rocks, all right, just like what it looked like in the slide before once that lava dries. And on top of that rock, we're going to draw some moss, all right, and we're going to make sure we label these guys as pioneer species, okay? Don't forget to define what a pioneer species is. It's just like a pioneer that we hear about in history, okay? Pioneers are going to be the first people to venture out into any unknown territory. Pioneer species are the same thing. These are going to be the first organisms to grow after any kind of catastrophic event. For primary succession, these are always going to be specifically mosses, lichens, and fungi. All right, so don't forget you're on stage 2, the second square in your primary succession comic, the second square. Now, the interesting thing is over time, okay, these mosses are going to they're going to die. Those pioneer species are going to die off. And as they grow, they're actually going to break up those rocks into smaller pieces. So those lichen and those mosses are growing right on top of the rocks. And over time, as their roots get deeper and deeper into the stone, they're actually going to start to break those rocks apart. And while everything dies, so once the moss dies, it actually combines with those smaller bits of rock. And slowly but surely, we start to create regular old dirt or soil, things that actually have some nutrients inside of it, okay? And those nutrients come from the decomposed mosses and lichens. So once I've started to create this soil, now certain things can start to grow. And usually what grows first are smaller shrubs, grasses, small flowers. It's going to be things that are pretty low to the ground. All right, and with these return of things that are kind of low to the ground, prey animals that rely on cover, like rabbits and mice, are also going to start to come back because, well, now they have grasses and they can actually protect them from predators like foxes and wolves and other small predators. Okay, so now I'm in your third box. Okay, don't forget we started from the left. So the first box has a volcano. The second box has some rocks with those nice moss and pioneer species growing on top of it. Now I'm in the third box that we are labeling stage 3. All right, make sure you draw me some nice dirt down at the bottom of this box, some nice brown soil, okay? And you're going to draw me some nice small shrubs, grasses, things that are lower to the ground, okay? And if you're a really great drawer, draw me a rabbit or a mouse. Okay, this is once again going to be the return of some of our animals. All right, up until this point, we've just had a whole bunch of moss covered rocks everywhere. All right, now that we have the creation of soil, seeds from other places can now start to fall onto the soil. They can start to germinate. We can start to grow grasses, small shrubs, and with the return of those things that create some cover, all right, don't forget now my smaller animals can return. Make sure you define for me how soil was created, okay? It's written in red, so somewhere in that panel you should be able to tell me that moss is going to die and decompose. It's going to combine with those smaller pieces of rocks, and it's going to create that soil that this grass and these shrubs are now relying on to grow. There's a rabbit. All right, so now in the very, very last box, so we have some grass, we had some shrubs, and over time, those things are going to die. They're actually going to create even more nutrients in the soil, and what that's going to do is prepare the way for even bigger plant life to take place. For example, trees, all right? Whenever we see a lot of trees, we consider that to be a climax community, all right? This is going to be a stable community. It's an equilibrium, which means nothing's really going to disrupt it. Everything's working the way it should be. Everything's nice and balanced. Everyone has what they need to grow. The trees are getting nice and tall because they have nutrients in the soil. They're getting water. The animals are also starting to get larger. So now we're talking about bears and larger predators like wolves. We're talking about birds of prey coming back because now we have mice and rabbits to hunt, okay? This is the very last stage of succession, all right? And specifically in primary succession, this is actually going to take centuries. Why is it going to take centuries? Well, we got to build soil from scratch, all right? We got to wait for all those really small mosses to break up those really large rocks, and well, that takes a really long time. Once I have dirt, going from smaller shrubs all the way up to larger trees doesn't actually take a very long time. So when we talk about primary succession, we always know it's going to take a long longer period of time because we have to create soil from scratch. All right, so that very, very last box in the primary succession row, all right, first box has a volcano, second box had some lichens and some mosses on top of rocks, the third box had our soil and our small shrubs, and this very last box is going to be our climax community. Okay, don't forget it's written in red, so we should be writing down the definition for a climax community somewhere in our box. Excuse me. Now, this is what we mean by primary succession. This is literally a stage. Okay, it takes 4 different main stages before we get to this climax community. The climax community is what we're looking for always in an ecosystem. We love for ecosystems to be in equilibrium. It means that they're healthy, that they're growing the way that they should. So when we talk about these stages of growth that a community or an ecosystem takes before they get back to normal, all right, coming back after volcanic eruption or after a glacier passes through takes a really long time. It takes centuries, all right? And this is what we call primary succession. It takes so long, once again, because we do have to create dirt from scratch, all right? So this is a good place to pause if you need a little bit more time to make your primary succession nice and pretty, because I'm moving on to secondary succession. Now, when we talk about secondary succession, we're still talking about a community that's trying to get back to normal, all right? But notice that our catastrophic event is a little bit different, all right? When we talk about a catastrophic event this time, we're going to be talking about things that aren't going to eliminate dirt. For example, a fire, all right? Fire is going to come through. It's going to destroy all the trees, right? It's going to destroy all the grasses, probably going to kill a couple of animals. But when it all is said and done, I don't got these huge rocks and stones everywhere. I still got dirt, right? Because fire doesn't really burn dirt. Okay, same thing with the flood. Flood's going to come through, but when the flood waters go away, we still have some soil left on the ground. All right, another catastrophic event that can cause secondary succession to happen would be human actions. Okay, think about when we do deforestation in the Amazon or even in the US. We're cutting down all these trees, right? If we leave it alone after a long time, those trees will eventually come back, but we can be a catastrophic event. Okay, so big tip for the upcoming Unit 1 exam: human activity always leads to horrible results. Okay, so if there's ever a question that comes up with what is the human impact on the environment, it's always bad. All right, mostly because we're always meddling with things that shouldn't be meddled with. So right next to secondary succession, we should be writing down this definition because it is written in red. All right, that very first square, secondary succession. Okay, we're starting from the left and moving over to the right. All right, we're drawing some kind of picture of a fire, some trees on fire. You can draw a flood if you so choose. Draw one, okay, not both. All right, draw a fire or a flood. All right, and in that second square, I want you to draw some soil, okay? I don't need any rocks this time because, like we said, a fire isn't going to burn up the soil. It's just going to burn up all the things around it. So just like it looks like in that picture, we got the fire up top, then we have the soil down at the bottom, okay? So in the first square, you can draw some fire just like I showed you here. In the second square of my secondary succession, you can draw some dirt just like you see there, or whatever your interpretation is of soil. All right. Once again, pause if you need a little time to do your pictures. I do expect them to be neat and pretty and nice and colorful because you are at home. All right. I'm moving on though to the third box, or the next stage of secondary succession. Now, since soil is here, all right, once again, we're just talking about a fire or a flood or even human interaction or involvement in the environment. I don't have to create from scratch. I don't have to create soil, from scratch. So small grasses and shrubs can grow a lot faster. All right, so these are going to be my pioneer species in secondary succession. All right, in secondary succession, small grasses and shrubs are my pioneer species. Why? I don't have to create soil from rocks. Nothing is growing on a rock. All right, don't forget our definition for pioneer species is the first thing to grow after a catastrophic event. When it comes to secondary succession, the first thing to grow are going to be small grasses and shrubs. In primary succession, the first thing to grow is going to be moss and lichen, okay? So pioneer species are literally the very first thing to grow. Depending on what environment you're in and what ecosystem we are trying to recover, pioneer species can look different. All right, pioneer species here in Miami are going to look a lot different than pioneer species up in upstate New York. Okay, all you have to remember is that a pioneer species is always going to be the very first thing that grows. All right, the very first thing that grows. So we're not making soil from scratch. Soil is already present. So now small grasses and shrubs can grow, and these are going to be my pioneer species. All right, so I'm in the third square. I'm drawing my pioneer species here. Make sure you label that these are the pioneer species in this type of succession. All right, you're going to draw me some shrubs, some grasses. Again, if you're a great artist, draw me a rabbit or a mouse. All right, and don't forget to tell me that the pioneer species is located here. All right, don't forget to tell me this pioneer species is located here. Finally, the very last part of our secondary succession is once again the climax community. We're looking for the same thing in primary succession and secondary succession. We're looking for nice, mature, old trees. We're looking for a community that is in equilibrium, that is in balance, that the food web everyone is participating the way that they should, that energy is flowing the way that it should. All right. Take note, however, that secondary succession only takes decades. All right. Why does it only take decades? I don't have to create soil from scratch. Soil is already present, so my trees and my shrubs can grow a lot faster. Primary succession takes so long, it takes centuries, because I do have to wait for those small mosses and lichen to break down those really big rocks, and that could take a really long time. So primary succession takes centuries, all right? Secondary succession, this only takes decades. All right, so at this point, you should have all 8 of your boxes filled out. Don't forget, we're reading them from left to right. Every box should have what's in red written inside that particular box. Each box should be labeled stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, each box should be labeled station 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, that's it for succession. I'll see you guys in class on Tuesday or Wednesday. Have a good night.